A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Marley was dead to begin with. There was no doubt whatever about that. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead? Of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and he were partners for I don't know how many years. Scrooge was his sole executor, his sole friend, and sole mourner. There is no doubt that Marley was dead. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come of the story we're going to relate. Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name. There it remained 7 years after Marley's death above the counting-house door. Scrooge and Marley. Sometimes people new to the business called Scrooge Scrooge, and sometimes Marley, but he answered to both names. It was all the same to him. There he sat on Christmas Eve in his office with his poor clerk, Bob Cratchit, near freezing in the front office, his tiny fire nearly out. Bob cautiously attempted to remedy this by adding some coals, but was brought up short by the sharp voice of his employer.
Mr. Cratchit,
Yes, Mr. Scrooge?
what are you doing?
My fire's nearly out, sir. I was just going to add a couple of coals.
Touch one coal in that box, and it will be necessary for us to part.
Wherefore the clerk wrapped his scarf around his neck and tried to warm himself at the candle, in which effort, not being a man of a strong imagination, he failed. The door opened then, and in came a young man with as cheerful a face as you could ever hope to meet.
Merry Christmas, Bob Cratchit.
Merry Christmas, Mr. Hollywell. It's your nephew Fred, sir.
A Merry Christmas, Uncle.
Bah, humbug.
Christmas a humbug, Uncle? You don't mean that, I'm sure.
I do. Merry Christmas. What right have you to be merry? What reason have you to be merry? You're poor enough.
Come then. What right have you to be dismal? What reason have you to be morose? You're rich enough.
Bah, humbug.
Don't be cross, Uncle.
What else can I be when I live in such a world of fools as this? Merry Christmas. What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money? A time for finding yourself a year older but not an hour richer? A time for balancing your books and having every item in 'em through a round dozen of months presented dead against you? If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through his heart.
Uncle!
Nephew, keep Christmas in your own way, and let me keep it in mine.
Keep it, but you don't keep it.
Well, let me leave it alone, then. Much good it may do you, much good it has ever done you.
There are many things from which I may have derived good, by which I have not profited, Christmas among the rest. But I am sure I have always thought of Christmas time, when it has come round, as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time. The only time I know of, in the long calendar of the year, when men and women seemed by one consent to open their shut-up hearts freely, and to think of people below them as if they really were fellow passengers to the grave, and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. And therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good, and will do me good, and I say God bless it.
Let me hear another sound from you, Cratchit, and you'll keep your Christmas by losing your situation. You're quite a powerful speaker, sir. I wonder you don't go into Parliament.
Don't be angry, Uncle. Come, dine with us tomorrow.
Humbug.
But why? Why?
Why did you get married?
Because I fell in love.
Oh, because you fell in love. Good afternoon.
Nay, Uncle, but you never came to see me before that happened. Why give it as a reason for not coming now?
Good afternoon.
I want nothing from you. I ask nothing of you. Why cannot we be friends?
Good afternoon.
I am sorry, with all my heart, to find you so resolute. We have never had any quarrel to which I have been a party, but I'll keep my Christmas humor to the last. So Merry Christmas, Uncle.
Good afternoon.
And a Happy New Year.
Good afternoon.
Give my best to your wife, Bob Cratchit.
Thank you, Mr. Fred. Merry Christmas to you and yours.
There's another fellow, my clerk, with 15 shillings a week and a wife and family, talking about a Merry Christmas. I'll retire to Bedlam.
Fred took his leave, holding the door open for a portly, pleasant-looking gentleman. The man smiled and nodded at Bob.
Good evening. May I have a word with your employer?
We are very busy tonight. What do you want?
Oh, have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley?
Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years. He died 7 years ago this very night.
I have no doubt that his liberality is well represented by his surviving partner. At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, it is more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provision for the poor and destitute who suffer greatly at the present time. Many thousands are in want of common necessities. Hundreds of thousands are in want of common comforts, sir.
Are there no prisons?
Plenty of prisons.
And the union workhouses, are they still in operation?
They are. I wish I could say they were not.
I was afraid from what you said at first that something had occurred to stop them in their useful course. I'm very glad to hear it.
Under the impression that they scarcely furnish Christian cheer of mind or body to the multitude, a few of us are endeavoring to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. We choose this time because it is a time of all times when want is keenly felt and abundance rejoices. What shall I put you down for?
Nothing.
Oh, you wish to remain anonymous.
I wish to be left alone. Since you ask me what I wish, sir, that is my answer. I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support the establishments I have mentioned. They cost enough, and those who are badly off must go there.
Many can't go there. Many would rather die.
Well, if they would rather die, they had better do it, and decrease the surplus population. Besides, it's not my business. It's enough for a man to understand his own business, and not to interfere with other people's. Mine occupies me constantly. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
The gentleman nodded politely to Bob on his way out.
You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose.
If quite convenient, sir.
It's not convenient, and it's not fair. If I was to stop half a crown for it, you'd think yourself ill-used, I'll be bound. And yet you don't think me ill-used when I pay a day's wages for no work.
It's only once a year, sir.
A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. But I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here all the earlier next morning.
Yes, sir.
The office was closed in a twinkling. Scrooge took his melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern, then made his solitary way home. He lived in chambers which had once belonged to his deceased partner. They were a gloomy suite of rooms in a lonely house set back by itself in an industrial yard, where it had no business to be, and one can scarcely help fancying it must have run there when it was a young house, playing at hide-and-seek with other houses, and forgot the way out again. Now it is a fact that there was nothing at all particular about the knocker on the door. It's also a fact that Scrooge had seen it night and morning during his whole residence in that place. Also that Scrooge had as little of what is called fancy about him as any man in the city of London. And then explained to me how Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, looked at the knocker, but instead of seeing the knocker, saw Marley's face. Marley's face. It had a dismal light about it, like a bad lobster in a dark cellar. It looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look, with ghostly spectacles turned up upon its ghostly forehead. The hair curiously stirred, as if by breath or hot air. The eyes were wide open, but perfectly motionless. As Scrooge stared at this phenomenon, suddenly it became a knocker again. To say that he was not startled would be untrue, but he put his hand upon the key, turned it sturdily, walked in, and lit his candle. He did pause with a moment's irresolution before he shut the door, and he did look cautiously behind it first, as if he half expected to see Marley's pigtail sticking out into the hall. But there was nothing on the back of the door except the screws and nuts that held the knocker on, so he said,
"Pooh, pooh,"
and closed it again with a bang. Scrooge locked himself in, double locked himself in. Thus secured against surprise, he took off his cravat, put on his dressing gown, slippers, and nightcap, and sat down before the fire in his sitting room to take his gruel.
Marley's ghost?
The same face, the very same. Marley in his pigtail, usual waistcoat, tights, and boots. The chain he drew was clasped about his middle. It was long and wound about him like a tail. It was made of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, and ledgers wrought in steel. His body was transparent, so that Scrooge, observing him and looking through his waistcoat, could see the 2 buttons on his coat behind. Though he saw the phantom standing before him, though he felt the chilling influence of its death-cold eyes, he still couldn't believe it, and fought against his senses.
How now? What do you want with me?
Much.
Who are you?
Ask me who I was.
Well, who were you then? You're particular for a shade.
In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley. You don't believe in me.
No, I don't.
What evidence would you have of my reality beyond that of your senses?
But I don't know.
Why do you doubt your senses?
Because a little thing affects them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheats. You may be an underdigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato. There's more of gravy than of grave about you, whatever you are. Humbug! I tell you, humbug! Mercy! Dreadful apparition, why do you trouble me?
Man of the worldly mind, do you believe in me or not?
Well, I do. I must. But why do spirits walk the earth, and why do you come to me?
It is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow men and travel far and wide. And if that spirit goes not forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death. It is doomed to wander through the world. Oh, woe is me! And witness what it cannot share, but might have shared on earth and turned to happiness.
You are fettered. Tell me why.
I wear the chain I forged in life. I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it on my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. Is its pattern strange to you? Or would you know the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full as heavy and as long as this, 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored on it since. It is a ponderous chain.
Jacob. Oh, Jacob Marley. Tell me more. Speak comfort to me, Jacob.
I have none to give. It comes from other regions, Ebenezer Scrooge, and is conveyed by other ministers to other kinds of men. I cannot rest, I cannot stay, I cannot linger anywhere. My spirit never walked beyond our counting house. Mark me. In life, my spirit never roved beyond the narrow limits of our money-changing hole, and weary journeys lie before me.
You travel fast?
On the wings of the wind. Oh, captive, bound, and double-ironed, not to know that no space of regret can make amends for one's life's opportunities misused. Yet such was I. Oh, such was I.
But you were always a good man of business, Jacob.
Business? Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business. At this time of the rolling year, I suffer most. Why did I walk through crowds of fellow beings with my eyes turned down and never raise them to the blessed star which led the wise men to a poor abode? Were there no poor homes to which its light would have conducted me?
Don't be flowery, Jacob.
How is it that I appear before you now in a shape that you can see? I may not tell. I have sat invisible beside you many and many a day. That is no light part of my penance. I'm here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate, a chance and hope of my procuring Ebenezer.
You were always a good friend to me. Thank ye.
You will be haunted by 3 spirits.
Is that the chance and hope you mentioned, Jacob?
It is.
I think I'd rather not.
Without their visits, you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first tonight when the bell tolls 1.
Couldn't I take 'em all at once and have it over, Jacob?
Expect the second on the stroke of 2. The third will appear in his own time.
Marley backed away, floating toward the window, which opened of itself as he approached. He passed through the window and wall, and as he did, he beckoned Scrooge, who went to the window and looked out. The air was filled with phantoms. Every one of them wore chains like Marley's ghost. Many had been personally known to Scrooge in their lives. He had been quite familiar with one old ghost in a white waistcoat, with a monstrous iron safe attached to its ankle, who cried piteously at being unable to assist a wretched woman with an infant, whom it saw below upon a doorstep. The misery with them all was clearly that they sought to interfere for good in human matters and had lost the power forever. Whether these creatures faded into mist or mist enshrouded them, he could not tell, but they and their spirit voices faded together. Scrooge closed the window.
Humbug.
Scrooge went to his bedroom and lay down. He looked at the clock.
It's just past midnight. Marley said the first spirit will arrive at 1. Marley said, Marley is dead. Was it a dream or not? Well, I shall stay awake until 1 o'clock is past.
Suddenly, Scrooge found himself face to face with a strange figure. Its hair was white as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle in it. It wore a tunic of the purest white, and round its waist was bound a lustrous belt. It held a branch of fresh green holly in its hand, and its dress was trimmed with summer flowers. But the strangest thing about it was that from the crown of its head there sprang a bright, clear jet of light, by which all this was visible, and which was doubtless the occasion of its using in its duller moments a great cap which it now held under its arm.
Are you the spirit whose coming was foretold to me?
I am.
Well, who and what are you?
I am the ghost of Christmas past.
Long past?
No, your past.
Why do you carry your cap beneath your arm? Why do you not wear it?
What? Would you so soon put out with worldly hands the light I give? Is it not enough that you are one of those whose passions made this cap and forced me through whole trains of years to wear it low upon my brow?
I meant no offense. So what business brings you to me?
Your welfare.
Oh, well, I am much obliged, but wouldn't a night of unbroken rest be more conducive to that end?
Your reclamation, then. Take heed, rise, and walk with me.
Scrooge obeyed, and the ghost took his hand. To his shock, they passed through the wall together and stood upon an open country road with fields on either hand. The city had entirely vanished. The darkness and the mist vanished with it, for it was a clear, cold winter day with snow upon the ground.
Good heaven! This is my school. I was a boy here. Oh, look! There are all my schoolmates on their way home for the holiday. Hello, Bill! Jacob! Hello!
These are but the shadows of the things that have been. They have no consciousness of us.
They passed into the school. A little boy sat by himself reading a book. Scrooge recognized him as well, but did not call to him.
The room is not quite deserted. A solitary child, neglected by his friends, is left there still.
I know.
Your lip is trembling. And what is that upon your cheek?
Well, nothing. A pimple. I was not completely alone, though. I knew how to find company. Here, I found dear old honest Ali Baba. Yes. That Christmas, when I was left alone, Ali Baba kept me company. Poor boy. And Robinson Crusoe, alone with only his parrot and Friday on the island. Oh, poor boy.
Let us see another Christmas.
The room stayed the same, but the little boy vanished. In his place stood a young man waiting by the window. A little girl ran in and embraced the young man.
Little Fan, my sister.
Dear brother, I have come to bring you home. Home.
Home, little Fan.
Yes, Ebenezer, home for good and all. Father is so much kinder than he used to be. He spoke so gently to me one dear night when I was going to bed that I was not afraid to ask him once more if you might come home. And he said, yes, you should, and sent me in a coach to bring you. And you are never to come back here. We are to be together all the Christmas long and have the merriest time in all the world.
Little Fan took her brother's hand and began to drag him in her childish eagerness towards the door, and he, nothing loath to go, accompanied her, laughing.
Always a delicate creature, whom a breath might have withered. But she had a large heart.
So she had.
She died a woman, and had, as I think, children.
One child.
True, your nephew, Fred.
Yes.
They left the school behind them, and immediately Scrooge found himself in the busy thoroughfares of a city, where shadowy pedestrians passed by, where shadowy carts and coaches battled for the way, and all the strife and tumult of a real city existed. There, too, it was Christmas time again, but it was evening, and the streets were lit up. The ghost stopped at a warehouse door.
Do you know this place?
Know it? I was apprenticed here.
They entered. An old, cheerful-looking gentleman sat behind a desk so high that if he were 2 inches taller, he would have knocked his head against the ceiling.
Why, it's old Fezziwig, bless his heart. It's Fezziwig alive again, and there I am with Dick Wilkins, the other apprentice.
Yo, ho there, Ebenezer, Dick. No more work tonight, my boys. Christmas Eve, Ebenezer. Put down that pen, clear away, my lads, and let's have lots of room here. Hilly-ho, Dick, chop, Ebenezer.
Clear away? There was nothing they wouldn't have cleared away, or couldn't have cleared away, with old Fezziwig looking on. It was done in a minute. The floor was swept and watered, the lamps were trimmed, fuel was heaped upon the fire, and the warehouse was as snug and warm and dry and bright a ballroom as you would desire to see upon a winter's night. In came a fiddler with a music book and tuned like 50 stomach aches. In came Mrs. Fezziwig, smiling one vast, substantial smile. In came the 3 Miss Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable. In came the 6 young followers whose hearts they broke. In came all the young men and women employed in the business. In they all came, one after another, some shyly, some boldly, some gracefully, some awkwardly, some pushing, some pulling. In they all came, anyhow and everyhow. Away they all went, 20 couples at once, hands half round and back again the other way. Down the middle and up again, round and round. Old top couple always turning up in the wrong place. New top couple starting off again as soon as they get there. All top couples at last, and not a bottom one to help them. When this result was brought about, old Fezziwig clapped his hands to stop the dance.
Well done.
There you are, so happy with Belle.
Belle. I forgot how young she was then. Ah, so beautiful.
Ebenezer, it makes me so happy to see you laugh and enjoy the dance.
Belle, I am happy to hear you say so. And if you really mean it, well, there is one particular way in which you will secure my happiness for life. Will you marry me?
Ebenezer!
And young Ebenezer, in love, promised his heart to that young woman who loved him back, poor though he was. There were more dances, and there was cake and plenty of beer. But the great effect of the evening came when old Fezziwig stood out to dance with Mrs. Fezziwig. And when old Fezziwig and Mrs. Fezziwig got all through the dance, Fezziwig cut so deftly that he appeared to wink with his legs, and landed upon his feet again without a stagger. When the clock struck 11, the domestic ball broke up. Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig took their stations, one on either side of the door, and shook hands with every person individually as he or she went out, wishing him or her a Merry Christmas. When everybody had retired but Dick and Ebenezer, the two apprentices, the Fezziwigs wished them good night and Merry Christmas, and exited. And thus the cheerful voices died away, and the lads were left to their beds, which were under a counter in the back shop.
A small matter to make these silly folks so full of gratitude.
Small?
Why, is it not? He has spent but a few pounds of your mortal money, 3 or 4 perhaps. Is that so much that he deserves this praise?
Well, it isn't that. It isn't that, Spirit. He has the power to render us happy or unhappy, to make our service light or burdensome, a pleasure or a toil. Say that his power lies in words and looks, in things so slight and insignificant that it is impossible to add and count them up. What then? The happiness he gives is quite as great as if it costs a fortune.
What is the matter?
Nothing particular.
Something, I think.
Oh, no. I should like to be able to say a word or two to my clerk just now. That's all.
The happy atmosphere of the warehouse disappeared, and Scrooge saw he and the ghost were now outdoors, on a winter's day, another Christmas. He remembered. He saw his younger self, now some years older than he had been at the dance, sitting on a bench beside Belle.
This matters little to you, so very little. Another idol has displaced me, and if it can cheer and comfort you in times to come, as I would have tried to do, I have no just cause to grieve.
What idol has displaced you?
A golden one.
This is the even-handed dealing of the world. There is nothing on which it is so hard as poverty, and there is nothing it professes to condemn with such severity as the pursuit of wealth.
You fear the world too much. All your other hopes have merged into the hope of being beyond the chance of its sordid reproach. I've seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one until the master passion, gain, engrosses you. Have I not?
What then? Even if I have grown so much wiser, what then? I am not changed towards you.
Our contract is an old one. It was made when we were both poor and content to be so, until in good season we could improve our worldly fortune by our patient industry. You are changed. When it was made, you were another man.
I was a boy.
Your own feeling tells you that you were not what you are. I am. That which promised happiness when we were one in heart is fraught with misery now that we are two. How often and how keenly I've thought of this, I will not say. It's enough that I have thought of it and can release you.
Have I ever sought release?
In words, no, never.
In what then?
In a changed nature, in an altered spirit, in everything that made my love of any worth or value in your sight. If this had never been between us, tell me, would you seek me out and try to win me now?
You think not.
I would gladly think otherwise if I could, heaven knows. But if you were free today, tomorrow, can even I believe that you would choose a dowerless girl? You, who weigh everything by gain. Or, choosing her, if for a moment you were false enough to your one guiding principle to do so, do I not know that your repentance and regret would surely follow? I do, and I release you, with a full heart for the love of him you once were. You may, the memory of what is past half makes me hope you will, have pain in this. A very, very brief time, and you'll dismiss the recollection of it, gladly, as an unprofitable dream, from which it happened well that you awoke. May you be happy in the life you have chosen.
Spirit, show me no more. Conduct me home. Why do you delight to torture me?
One shadow more.
No more, no more. I don't wish to see it. Show me no more.
But the relentless ghost forced him to observe what happened next. They were in another scene and place, a room not very large or handsome, but full of comfort. Near to the winter fire sat a beautiful young girl, so like Belle that Scrooge believed it to be her, until he saw her, Belle, now a comely matron, sitting opposite her daughter. There were more children there in that noisy, tumultuous room than Scrooge could count. No one seemed to mind all the noise and chaos. On the contrary, the mother and daughter laughed heartily, enjoying it very much. Belle's husband, the father of this fine brood, entered, laden with Christmas toys and presents. The children mobbed around him, shouting with joy. When all the presents had been doled out, the children whisked them away to be enjoyed, leaving the parents by themselves.
Belle, I saw an old friend of yours this afternoon.
Who was it?
Guess.
How can I? I don't know. Mr. Scrooge.
Mr. Scrooge it was. I passed his office window, and as it was not shut up, and he had a candle inside, I could scarcely help seeing him. His partner lies upon the point of death, I hear, and there he sat alone, quite alone in the world, I do believe.
Poor Ebenezer. I pity him.
Spirit, remove me from this place.
I told you these were the shadows of the things that have been, that they are what they are. Do not blame me.
Remove me. I cannot bear it. Leave me. Take me back. Haunt me no longer.
Scrooge turned on the ghost, grabbing its cap and putting it over the spirit's head, extinguishing its fine light. The darkness was complete. But as Scrooge's eyes became accustomed to the dark, he realized he was home in his own dark sitting room. At the sound of the clock, the room was suddenly blazed with light. There was a table laden with a huge Christmas feast, and the room was strewn with Christmas decor. Standing in the corner was a strange, jolly, tall figure wearing a green robe, a crown of berries and icicles, and carrying a lit torch.
Come in, and know me better, man. I am the ghost of Christmas present. Look upon me. You have never seen the like of me before.
Never.
Have never walked forth with the younger members of my family, meaning, for I am very young, my elder brothers and sisters born in these later years?
I don't think I have. I'm afraid I have not. Have you had many brothers and sisters, Spirit?
More than 1,800.
A tremendous family to provide for. Spirit, conduct me where you will. Earlier this night I learnt a lesson which is working now. If you have aught to teach me, let me profit by it.
Scrooge's bedroom disappeared. He found himself beside the ghost, standing in the city streets on a Christmas morning. The weather itself was gloomy, cold and cloudy, yet there was an air of cheerfulness. For the people who were shoveling away on the housetops were jovial and full of glee, now and then exchanging a snowball, laughing heartily if it went right and not less heartily if it went wrong. The poulterers' shops were still half open, and the fruiterers were radiant in their glory. The blended scents of tea and coffee were so grateful to the nose, the almonds so extremely white, the sticks of cinnamon so long and straight, the other spices so delicious. The customers were all so hurried and so eager in the hopeful promise of the day. The sight of these poor revelers appeared to interest the ghost very much, for it stood beside Scrooge in a baker's doorway and sprinkled incense on their dinners from its torch. It was a very uncommon kind of torch, for once or twice, when angry words were exchanged between some dinner carriers who had jostled each other, the ghost shed a few drops of water on them from it, and their good humor was restored directly. And then they smiled and said that it was a shame to quarrel upon Christmas Day.
Is there a peculiar flavor in what you sprinkle from your torch?
There is, my own.
Would it apply to any kind of dinner on this day?
To any kindly given, to a poor one most.
Well, why to a poor one most?
Because it needs it most.
The scene around them changed again, and they found themselves inside a warm, humble room, where a woman and her children were busy setting a table for Christmas dinner. The ghost smiled and sprinkled incense from its torch over the table.
Do you know this home, this family?
No, I have never been here.
I am not surprised. This is the home of Bob Cratchit. This is his wife and his children.
Ah, think of that. Bob makes but 15 bob a week, and yet here you are, blessing his little house.
We smelled the goose, Mother, outside of the baker's.
We smelled the goose and sage and onion. What time is dinner?
What has ever got your precious father then? And your brother, Tiny Tim? And Martha weren't as late last Christmas Day by half an hour.
Here I am, Mother.
Hurrah! There's such a goose, Martha.
Why, bless your heart alive, my dear. How late you are.
We'd a deal of work to finish up last night and had to clear away this morning, Mother.
Well, never mind, as long as you are come. Sit down before the fire, my dear, and warm yourself.
No, there's Father coming.
Hide, Martha, hide.
Bob Cratchit entered with his youngest son, Tiny Tim, on his shoulders, their cheeks red with the cold. Bob set the boy down and handed him his crutch, then looked around.
Why, where's our Martha?
Not coming.
Not coming? Not coming upon Christmas Day?
Oh, Father, here I am.
I am glad to see you, my dear.
Bob's family greeted him with hugs and kisses.
Come, Tim. Let's go out and listen to the pudding hissing in the fire.
Tiny Tim's brother and sister helped their little brother out of the room.
And how did little Tim behave?
As good as gold and better. Somehow he gets thoughtful sitting by himself so much, and he thinks the strangest things you ever heard. He told me coming home that he hoped the people saw him in the church because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant to them to remember upon Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and the blind men see.
Scrooge observed this and watched Tim enter again, leaning on his crutch. His brothers and sisters helped him to a stool beside the fire.
What is wrong with the boy?
A moment ago, you knew not of his existence. You may have known your clerk had a family, but have you ever asked him any particulars?
The Cratchits' eldest son, Peter, entered, carrying a welcome burden.
Here is the goose.
All right, let us sit down to this feast. We thank thee, Heavenly Provider, for every earthly good, for life and health and family, and for our daily food. Amen.
Amen.
Now, let's carve this goose.
Hurrah!
Oh, there never was such a goose, my dear. A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us.
God bless us.
God bless us, everyone.
Spirit, tell me if Tiny Tim will live.
I see a vacant seat in the poor chimney corner and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die.
No. Oh, no. Oh, no, kind spirit. Say he will be spared.
If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, none other of my race will find him here. What then? If he be like to die, he had better do it and decrease the surplus population. Man, if man you be in heart, not adamant, forbear that wicked cant until you've discovered what the surplus is and where it is. Will you decide what men shall live, what men shall die? It may be that in the sight of heaven, you are more worthless and less fit to live than millions like this poor man's child.
Mr. Scrooge. To Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast.
The founder of the feast, indeed. I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast upon, and I hope he'd have a good appetite for it.
My dear, the children, Christmas Day.
It should be Christmas Day, I am sure, on which one drinks the health of such an odious, stingy, hard, unfeeling man as Mr. Scrooge. You know he is, Robert. Nobody knows it better than you do, poor fellow.
My dear, Christmas Day.
I'll drink his health for your sake and the day's, not for his. Long life to him, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. He'll be very merry and very happy, I have no doubt.
The family drank, but with serious faces. Bob's house faded, replaced by another. It was much finer than the Cratchits, yet not extravagant. A gathering of well-dressed, happy people filled the room. It was another Christmas party.
What place is this?
Listen, and look.
He said that Christmas was a humbug. As I live, he believed it too.
More shame for him, Fred.
He's a comical old fellow, that's the truth, and not so pleasant as he might be. However, his offenses carry their own punishment, and I have nothing to say against him.
I'm sure he is very rich, Fred. At least you have always told me so.
What of that, my dear? His wealth is of no use to him. He don't do any good with it. He don't make himself comfortable with it. He hasn't the satisfaction of thinking that he's ever going to benefit us with it.
I have no patience with him.
Oh, I have. I am sorry for him. I couldn't be angry with him if I tried. Who suffers by his ill whims? Himself, always. Here, he takes it into his head to dislike us, and he won't come to dine with us. What's the consequence? He don't lose much of a dinner.
Indeed, I think he loses a very good dinner.
Well, I'm very glad to hear it, because I haven't great faith in these new housekeepers. What do you say, Topper?
Oh, a bachelor is a wretched outcast who has no right to express an opinion on the subject.
Do go on, Fred. He never finishes what he begins to say. He is such a ridiculous fellow.
I was only going to say that the consequence of his taking a dislike to us and not making merry with us is, as I think, that he loses some pleasant moments, which could do him no harm. I'm sure he loses pleasanter companions than he can find in his own thoughts, either in his moldy old office or his dusty chambers. I mean to give him the same chance every year, whether he likes it or not, for I pity him. He may rail at Christmas till he dies, but he can't help thinking better of it. I defy him if he finds me going there in good temper year after year and saying, Uncle Scrooge, how are you? If it only puts him in the vein to leave his poor clerk 50 pounds, that's something. And I think I shook him yesterday.
Let's play a game now, Fred. How about yes and no?
Yes, yes.
Fred, you start us off.
All right, ready.
Is it an animal?
Yes.
Is it alive?
Yes.
Is it cuddly?
Oh, no.
Is it savage?
Yes.
Does it growl and grunt?
Yes.
Does it live in London?
Yes.
Does it walk about the streets?
Yes.
Is it made a show of?
Oh, no.
Is it led by anybody?
No.
Does it live in a menagerie?
No.
Is it killed in the market?
No.
Is it a horse?
No.
Is it an ass?
No.
A cow?
No.
A bull?
No.
A tiger?
No.
A dog?
No.
A bear?
No.
I found it out. I know what it is, Fred. I know what it is.
What is it?
It's your Uncle Scrooge.
Yes.
Oh, well, then you should have answered yes to my question. Is it a bear?
He has given us plenty of merriment, I am sure, and it would be ungrateful not to drink his health. Here is a glass of mulled wine ready to our hand at the moment, and I say, Uncle Scrooge.
Uncle
Scrooge.
The scene faded, and Scrooge found himself back in his bedroom with the ghost of Christmas presents standing before him. The spirit looked much older. Scrooge noticed this.
Are spirits' lives so short?
My life upon this globe is very brief. It ends tonight.
Tonight?
Tonight at midnight. Hark! The time is drawing near.
Forgive me, but I see something strange and not belonging to yourself protruding from beneath your robes. Is it a foot or a claw?
It might be a claw, for the flesh there is upon it. Look here.
From the foldings of its robe, the ghost brought forth 2 children. Wretched, frightful, miserable. They knelt down at his feet and clung upon the outside of his garment.
Look here. Look at them.
A boy and a girl. Ragged, scowling, wolfish. Where graceful youth should have filled their features out and touched them with its freshest tints, a stale and shriveled hand, like that of age, had pinched and twisted them and pulled them into shreds. Where angels might have sat enthroned, devils lurked and glared out, menacing. Scrooge started back, appalled.
Spirit, are they yours?
They are man's. This boy is ignorance. This girl is want. Beware them both, but most of all beware this boy. For on his brow I see that written which is doom unless the writing be erased.
Have they no refuge or resource?
Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses?
These words from the spirit echoed in Scrooge's ear as the vision of it and the children faded. Everything went dark. In the darkness, Scrooge realized he was not alone. He perceived a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, approaching like a mist along the ground.
I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come.
He received no reply.
You are about to show me shadows of the things that have not happened, but will happen in the time before us. Is that so, Spirit?
The phantom did not move or speak.
Ghost of the future, I fear you more than any spectre I have seen. But as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear you company and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me? Lead on, lead on. The night is waning fast, and it is precious time to me, I know. Lead on, Spirit.
The phantom glided away. Scrooge followed in its shadow. The city sprang suddenly up about them. Scrooge found himself in the heart of it, his old haunt amongst the merchants, hurrying up and down, chinking the money in their pockets, conversing in groups, looking at their watches, and so forth, as Scrooge had seen them often. The spirit stopped beside one little knot of businessmen and pointed its bony hand at them. Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk.
I don't know much about it, either way, but I only know he's dead.
When did he die?
Last night, I believe.
Why, what was the matter with him? I thought he'd never die.
God knows.
What has he done with all his money?
I haven't heard. Left it to his company, perhaps. He hasn't left it to me. That's all I know. It's likely to be a very cheap funeral, for upon my life, I don't know of anybody to go to it. Suppose we make up a party and volunteer.
I don't mind going if a lunch is provided, but I must be fed if I make one.
Well, I am the most disinterested among you, after all, for I never wear black gloves and I never eat lunch. But I'll offer to go if anybody else will. When I come to think of it, I'm not at all sure that I wasn't his most particular friend, for we used to stop and speak whenever we met.
Well, Old Scratch has got his own at last.
Cold, isn't it?
Seasonable for Christmas time. Good morning.
Not another word. That was their meeting, their conversation, and their parting.
Spirit, I don't understand. What had that trivial conversation to do with me? I don't see myself. There is my usual corner, but I'm not there.
Quiet and dark, beside him stood the phantom with its outstretched hand. Scrooge felt its unseen eyes looking at him keenly. He shuddered. They left the busy scene and went into an obscure part of the town where Scrooge had never before been. The ways were foul and narrow, the shops and houses wretched, the people drunken, ugly. The whole quarter reeked with crime, with filth and misery. Far in this den of infamous resort, there was a low-browed beetling shop where iron, old rags, and bottles were bought. Upon the floor within, heaps of rusty keys, nails, chains, and refuse iron of all kinds were piled. Sitting in among his wares by a charcoal stove made of old bricks was a gray-haired rascal, nearly 70 years of age, smoking his pipe in all the luxury of calm retirement. Scrooge and the phantom approached this man just as a woman with a heavy bundle stepped into the shop. Just behind her, another woman, similarly laden, entered, and she was closely followed by a man in faded black who was no less startled by the sight of them than they were upon the recognition of each other. They all three burst into a laugh.
Look
here, old Joe. Here's a chance. If we haven't all three met here without meaning it. Charwoman, housekeeper, and undertaker's assistant.
You couldn't have met in a better place.
What odds then? What odds, Mrs. Dilber? Every person has a right to take care of themselves. He always did.
That's true indeed. No man more so.
Very well then. Who's the worse for the loss of a few things like these? Not a dead man, I suppose.
No, indeed.
If he wanted to keep him after he was dead, the wicked old screw, why wasn't he natural in his lifetime? If he had been, he'd have had somebody to look after him when he was struck with death, instead of lying, gasping out his last there, alone by himself.
It's the truest word that ever was spoke. It's a judgment on him.
I wish it was a little heavier judgment, and it should have been. You may depend upon it. If I could have laid my hands on anything else. Open that bundle, old Joe, and let me know the value of it. Speak out plain. I'm not afraid to be the first, nor afraid for them to see it. We know pretty well what we were helping ourselves to before we met here, I believe. It's no sin. Open the bundle, Joe.
Not at all. Let me be first, I insist.
Joe pulled out the bundle from the undertaker's assistant. There were some letter seals, a pencil case, cufflinks, and a brooch. He examined and appraised them, muttering figures. He wrote a figure in chalk upon a small slate and showed it privately to the undertaker's assistant.
That's your account. I wouldn't give another sixpence if I was to be boiled for not doing it. Who's next? Mrs. Dilber?
Mrs. Dilber sat down her bundle and opened it. Sheets and towels, some clothes, a couple of teaspoons, sugar tongs, and boots. Old Joe muttered his tally and wrote on the slate, then showed her.
I always give too much to the ladies. It's a weakness of mine, and that's the way I ruin myself. That's your account. If you asked me for another penny and made it an open question, I'd repent of being so liberal and knocked off half a crown.
And now undo my bundle, Joe.
Old Joe lowered himself onto his knees, undid the knots, and dragged out a large, heavy roll. He unrolled it and held his lamp over it.
Bed curtains!
Bed curtains!
You don't mean to say you took them down, rings and all, with him lying there?
Yes, I do. Why not?
You were born to make your fortune, and you'll certainly do it.
Joe rummaged beneath the curtains, examining the articles below.
I certainly shan't hold my hand when I can get anything in it by reaching it out, for the sake of such a man as he was. I promise you, Joe. Don't drop that oil on the blankets now.
His blankets?
Whose else do you think? He isn't likely to take cold without 'em, I dare say.
I hope he didn't die of anything catching, eh?
Don't you be afraid of that. I ain't so fond of his company that I'd loiter about him for such things if he did.
Old Joe continued to examine the bundle, finding some clothes.
You may look through that shirt till your eyes ache, but you won't find a hole in it, nor a threadbare place. It's the best he had, and a fine one, too. They'd have wasted it if it hadn't been for me.
What do you call wasting of it?
Putting it on him to be buried in, to be sure. Somebody was fool enough to do it, but I took it off again. If calico ain't good enough for such a purpose, it ain't good enough for anything. It's quite as becoming to the body. He can't look uglier than he did in that one.
Spirit, I see. The case of this unhappy man might be my own. My life tends that way now.
Once again the scene faded, replaced by a curtainless bed. Scrooge plainly perceived a body lying motionless on it, covered by a single sheet. Scrooge recoiled. The spirit pointed at the bed.
Spirit, this is a fearful place. In leaving it, I shall not leave its lesson. Trust me. Let us go.
The spirit, unmoved, relentlessly pointed at the bed and the figure that lay covered there.
I understand you, and I would do it if I could. But I have not the power, Spirit. I have not the power. If there is any person in the town who feels emotion caused by this man's death, show that person to me, Spirit. I beseech you.
The bed disappeared, and Scrooge found himself, with the ghost, in a small room, shabbier even than Bob Cratchit's. A young woman sat in a rocking chair, her face troubled. A young man entered, and she rose to greet him.
Is it good or bad?
Bad.
We are quite ruined?
No, there is hope yet, Caroline.
If he relents, there is. Nothing is past hope if such a miracle has happened.
He is past relenting. He is dead.
Oh, thank God! Forgive me, but thank God! To whom will our debt be transferred?
I don't know, but before that time, we shall be ready with the money. And even though we were not, it would be bad fortune indeed to find so merciless a creditor in his successor. We may sleep tonight with light hearts, Caroline.
Let me see some tenderness connected with the death, or that dark bedroom spirit will be forever present to me.
The scene changed suddenly, but to one Scrooge recognized immediately.
Oh, no, spirit, you've made a mistake. We've been here before. This is the Cratchit home. Oh, no, spirit. No, not Tiny Tim.
And he took a child and set him in the midst of them.
Sewing these black gloves hurts my eyes. It makes them weak by candlelight. And I wouldn't show weak eyes to your father when he comes home for the world. It must be near his time.
Past it, rather. But I think he walked a little slower than he used these last few evenings, Mother.
I have known him walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder, very fast indeed.
And so have I, often.
And so have I.
And so have I.
And so have I.
But he was very light to carry, and his father loved him so that it was no trouble. Oh, and there's your father at the door.
Bob entered his home, greeted by his family. Belinda brought him tea, and he sat in his chair, his younger children leaning on his knees. He looked at the gloves his wife was sewing.
Well, you've certainly gotten a lot of work done, my dear. These will be done long before Sunday.
Sunday? You went today then, Robert?
Yes, my dear. I wish you could have gone. It would have done you good to see how green the place is, but you'll see it often. I promised him that we would walk there on a Sunday. My little child. My little child. I must tell you of the extraordinary kindness of Mr. Scrooge's nephew Fred showed me today. I met him in the street earlier, and seeing that I looked a little down, he asked what was the matter, on which, for he is the pleasantest spoken gentleman you ever heard, I told him, "I'm heartily sorry for it, Mr. Cratchit," he said. "I'm heartily sorry for you and your good wife. By the by, how he ever knew that, I don't know."
You what, my dear?
Why, that you were a good wife.
Everybody knows that.
Very well observed, my boy. I hope they do. "Heartily sorry," he said, "for your good wife. If I could be of service to you in any way," he said, giving me his card. "That's where I live. Pray come to me." Now, it wasn't for the sake of anything that he might be able to do for us, so much as for his kind way, that this was quite delightful. It really seemed as if he had known our Tiny Tim and felt with us.
I'm sure he's a good soul.
You would be surer of it, my dear, if you saw and spoke to him. I shouldn't be at all surprised, mark what I say, if he got Peter a better situation.
Only hear that, Peter.
It's just as likely as not one of these days, though there's plenty of time for that, my dear. But however and whenever we part from one another, I'm sure we shall none of us forget poor Tiny Tim, shall we? Or this first parting that there was among us.
Never, Father.
And I know, my dears, that when we recollect how patient and how mild he was, although he was a little child, we shall not quarrel easily amongst ourselves and forget poor Tiny Tim in doing it.
No,
Never, Father.
I am very happy. I am very happy.
Bob's family embraced him as the scene went dark. Scrooge found himself alone with the ghost.
Spectre, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me what man that was whom we saw lying dead.
Scrooge suddenly realized they were standing in the midst of a graveyard on a cold, dark winter's night. The spirit pointed at a fresh grave. Scrooge shrank back, but the spirit pointed insistently.
Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point, answer me one question. Are these the shadows of the things that will be, or are they shadows of things that may be only?
Unmoved, the spirit pointed.
The course a man chooses will foreshadow certain ends, but if the course be departed from, the end will change. Say it is thus with what you show me.
He received no answer. Scrooge crouched toward the grave, and horrified, read the name engraved there.
Ebenezer Scrooge? Am I that man who lay upon the bed? No, Spirit, oh no, no, Spirit, hear me. I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been, but for all you have shown me. Why show me this if I am past all hope?
The spirit's hand began to tremble.
Good Spirit, your nature intercedes for me and pities me. Assure me that I yet may change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life. I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone.
Scrooge grasped the pointing hand. All around him went black, and he sobbed near despair. But when he opened his eyes, he beheld light. It was morning, and he found himself alone, back in his own bedroom, clasping a bedpost as he had clasped the ghost's hand. Scrooge's face filled with joy.
I will live! I will live! I will live in the past, the present, and the future. Oh, Jacob Marley, the spirits of all three shall strive within me. Christmas time be praised for this. Look, my curtains. They are not torn down. They are not torn down, rings and all. They are here. I am here. The shadows of the things that would have been may be dispelled. They will be. I know they will.
He jumped out of bed and began to dress, but he was flustered with happiness.
I don't know what to do. I am as light as a feather. I am as happy as an angel. I am as merry as a schoolboy. I am as giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas to everybody. A Happy New Year to all the world. Hello there! Wah-ha-ha-ha!
He danced from his bedroom into his sitting room, which was just as it had been the previous night.
There's the saucepan that the gruel was in. There's the door by which the ghost of Jacob Marley entered. There's the corner where the ghost of Christmas present stood. It's all right. It's all true. It all happened. I don't know what day of the month it is. I don't know how long I've been among the spirits. I don't know anything. Never mind. I don't care. Hello there!
Scrooge ran to his window and opened it. A boy ran by in the alley below, and Scrooge called out to him.
What's today?
Eh?
What's today, my fine fellow?
Today? Why, Christmas Day.
It's Christmas Day. I haven't missed it. The spirits have done it all in one night. Oh, they can do anything they like. Of course they can. Of course they can. Hello, my fine fellow.
Hello.
Do you know the poulterers in the next street but one at the corner?
I should hope I did.
An intelligent boy. A remarkable boy. Do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging up there? Not the little prize turkey, the big one.
What? The one as big as me?
Yes, the one as big as you.
It's hanging there now.
Is it? Go and buy it.
Walker.
No, I am in earnest. Go and buy it and tell him to bring it here that I may give them the direction where to take it. Come back with the man and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes and I'll give you half a crown.
The boy took off, running without wasting a word.
I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's. He shan't know who sends it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim.
Scrooge hurried to finish dressing, then wrote Bob Cratchit's address down on a slip of paper for the poulterer. He opened his door as the boy and poulterer approached, carrying a large turkey. Scrooge looked at his door-knocker, chuckled, and patted it affectionately.
I shall love it as long as I live. I scarcely ever looked at it before. What an honest expression it has in its face. It's a wonderful knocker. Here's the turkey. Hello! How are you? A Merry Christmas! What a turkey. Now please deliver it to this address.
He handed the poulterer Bob's address and gave both of them money.
Woohoo! Merry Christmas!
Merry
Merry
Christmas.
Christmas to you
Thank
too.
you, sir.
Scrooge donned his coat and hat, closed his door behind him, and stepped out into the streets. It was a bright, sunny Christmas morning. He smiled at everyone he passed, wishing them a Merry Christmas. He spied the gentleman who had come to his shop the evening before and hurried over to him.
My dear sir, how do you do? Oh, I hope you succeeded yesterday. It was very kind of you. A Merry Christmas to you, sir.
Mr. Scrooge.
Yes, that is my name, and I fear it may not be pleasant to you. Allow me to ask your pardon. And will you have the goodness?
Scrooge leaned close and whispered a figure into the man's ear.
Bless me, my dear Mr. Scrooge, are you serious?
If you please, not a farthing less. A great many back payments are included in it, I assure you. Will you do me that favor?
My dear sir, I don't know what to say to such generosity.
Don't say anything, please. Have a Merry Christmas.
I will. Merry Christmas to you.
They parted ways, and Scrooge continued on, feeling better than he had in years. He made his way to his nephew's home, and a little nervously knocked on the door. A maid opened it.
Is your master home, my dear?
Yes, sir. He's in the dining room. Please come in.
Ah, Fred.
Why, bless my soul.
It's I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to dinner. Will you let me in, Fred?
Let him in. It's a mercy he didn't shake his arm off. He was at home in 5 minutes. Nothing could be heartier. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful happiness. But he was early at the office next morning. Oh, he was early there. If he could only be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming late. That was the thing he had set his heart upon. And he did it. Yes, he did. The clock struck 9. No Bob. 1/4 past. No Bob. He was full 18 minutes and a half behind his time. Scrooge sat with his door wide open so that he might see Bob come into the office. Bob's hat was off before he opened the door, his scarf, too. He was on his stool in a jiffy, driving away with his pen as if he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock.
Hello? What do you mean by coming here at this time of day?
I am very sorry, sir. I am behind my time.
Yes, I think you are. Step this way, if you please.
It's only once a year, sir. It shall not be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday, sir.
Now, I'll tell you what, my friend. I am not going to stand this sort of thing any longer. And therefore, I'm going to raise your salary. Merry Christmas, Bob. A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavor to assist your struggling family, and we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop. Make up the fires and buy another coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit.
Yes, sir. Merry Christmas.
Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, and grew strong and well, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the whole good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. From then on, it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that be truly said of us all. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone.